Walking on water and sailing without sight. How do they do it? Faces from the grave, solving forgotten crimes. How is it done? And Born Free, coming to the rescue of lions in Africa. How do they do that? For the answers, join Eamon and Jenny, Wednesday at 8 on BBC1.
A top-deck view of London with some rare sights as BBC 2 now explores the cultural and commercial aspects of tourism in the capital.
She's got 2 children, Mr. McCaffrey. She's the sole support of her family. You can't ask me to take a job from her as well.
A question of loyalty.
Nobody gets to do everything they want. Sometimes there's other people to consider.
And the price of betrayal.
I will not have you harassing my employees. You have to stay well clear. Is that understood? God loves you, Kathy, as anyone would.
A Mugs game in 15 minutes on BBC 1.
And today's news before that on BBC 1 with Peter Sissons.
America says it wants Bosnian Serbs accused of war crimes handed over to stand trial. It names Radovan Karadzic and Ratko Mladic and warns of the consequences if they're not given up. A woman firefighter is killed in a Bristol blaze, the first to die on duty in Britain. And privatised trains start running at last, but there's a political row as one line is stalled by fraud allegations. Good evening. The American Secretary of State today pressed the Serbian government in Belgrade to hand over the Bosnian-Serb leaders Radovan Karadzic and Ratko Mladic to stand trial for alleged war crimes. Warren Christopher warned that America would withhold international aid and keep sanctions in place until they were extradited. In Bosnia, the UN Human Rights Envoy Elizabeth Wren has been investigating the disappearance of several thousand Muslims in Srebrenica. Serb officials told her today that they died in battle.
President Milosevic is now pushing hard for an end to his diplomatic isolation. But despite this welcome, the Americans say he won't get it until he has handed over General Mladic and Radovan Karadzic, the 2 Bosnian Serb leaders accused of war crimes. Afterwards, at the American embassy, the American Secretary of State spelt out the demand.
I urge that he take further steps to cooperate with the War Crimes Tribunal in all respects, to make available those who have been indicted.
This is one of the crimes the Bosnian Serb leaders stand accused of, killing thousands of Muslim men after the fall of Srebrenica last year. Today, the UN's Human Rights Envoy Elizabeth Wren saw the gruesome evidence at first hand. The Bosnian Serbs insist that these men were killed in battle, but the evidence suggests that thousands were also executed and buried in mass graves.
There is no doubt about the mass graves, and what they are hiding is something that is of very great interest for all parties who are involved in this.
Srebrenica will always be remembered as the town which the UN abandoned. Today, the only people on the streets are Serb refugees from other parts of Bosnia. 8,000 Muslim men are still unaccounted for, and it's going to take more than one trip to uncover the truth. The UN came here but failed to protect the people of Srebrenica. Now the least it can do is to find out exactly what happened to the thousands who went missing after this enclave fell. Tom Carver, BBC News, Srebrenica.
Here, a woman firefighter was killed when she went into a burning supermarket at Staple Hill in Bristol to check if anyone was trapped. She's believed to be the first female fire officer to be killed on duty. A male colleague who was with her received minor injuries.
Fleur Lombard was among 60 firefighters called to the crowded supermarket at lunchtime. As the flames rapidly gutted the store, she and a colleague went to check if anyone was trapped inside. It's thought she was struck by falling debris. Both firefighters were dragged clear, but Miss Lombard, who was 21, had died.
We've got quite a number of female firefighters in the brigade. They do exactly the same, perform exactly the same role as their male counterparts. Inevitably, they end up in the same situations. But I think we are a very caring organisation, and certainly the menfolk are absolutely desperate about this, because she was a very popular lady.
Miss Lombard is believed to be the first woman firefighter in England and Wales to die on duty. She was stationed only a mile from the tragedy, having joined the Avon Fire Service just over a year ago. Her family in Derbyshire said tonight she died doing what she wanted to do. Women firefighters are still in a minority, only 130 out of a total of 42,000. In all, 21 officers have died since 1990. Only last Thursday, 2 part-time crew members were killed at a house fire in Gwent. Tonight, the Fire Brigades Union said it was extremely alarmed at the rising toll of deaths and injuries to firefighters. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News.
The government has been playing down a major hiccup in the launch of the first privatised railway lines. 2 lines in the south of England have been running private trains today for the first time in 50 years. But a third, the London-Tilbury Southend line, will stay in the public sector, pending an investigation into allegations that its operator was involved in a ticket fraud.
This morning's first train into Fenchurch Street should have marked the privatisation of what's generally known as the Misery Line. Instead, the LTS sell-off's been suspended indefinitely because of an alleged ticketing fraud. Labour says it shows the dangers of selling off the network. The government disagrees.
I think any allegations of irregularities have to be taken seriously. We've done that. They're being investigated. I hope we can resolve it quite soon and then make progress with that franchise.
Meanwhile, at Twickenham, the bus operator Stagecoach celebrated its takeover of South West trains with cake and commemorative tickets, which are already collector's items. Its full plans won't be revealed till tomorrow, but they certainly include bus integration, and that's politically sensitive. This morning's first privatised Great Western train was in reality a bus from Fishguard. Labour says this is what's really facing travellers, and today it renewed its pledge to restore a single national network, though not to buy back shares.
We've got the government's going to throw away an asset worth £6.5 billion. We're not going to say simply, go ahead and buy it, you can make your cheap profits, we'll buy it back and use all your taxpayers' money so that the fat profits are absolutely guaranteed. We're not that stupid.
Today's events have officially ended half a century of state monopoly, though the present-day network is much smaller than it was in post-war Britain. From tomorrow, Stagecoach alone is running 1,500 services daily. Rail privatisation is now a race against time, with half of BR's train operating companies either sold or under offer. It's quite possible the rest will be got rid of before the next election. In May, the biggest prize of all comes up for grabs, when Railtrack, which runs the lines, the stations and the signalling, is floated. But its success depends on what investors think will happen after the election. Christopher Wayne, BBC News.
The head of the advisory body on the decommissioning of arms in Northern Ireland has warned of a split within the IRA and a possible return to violence. The former US Senator George Mitchell said that all-party talk should begin as soon as possible. Sinn Féin rejected the warning.
While the IRA has denied any involvement in Friday's gun attack on a police reservist's home in County Tyrone, such incidents have clearly caused concern to the man brought in recently to examine the question of illegal arms in Northern Ireland. Talking to Sir David Frost, George Mitchell expressed his fears about dissension within IRA ranks.
I think there is a danger of a fracture within that organization. It seems clear that not all on the Republican side favor the ceasefire, and the potential for some elements to take direct and violent action, I think, does remain.
Sinn Féin's Martin McGuinness says he isn't worried that a breakaway IRA group might have carried out Friday's shooting, and he registered surprise at George Mitchell's comments.
I believe that over the course of the last 18 months or so since the beginning of the ceasefire, that the IRA have proved themselves to be a very disciplined and cohesive organisation. And I don't believe that there's any danger of a split within the IRA.
If there's one thing Sinn Féin and the IRA want to avoid, it's any kind of a split, hence their sensitivity over George Mitchell's latest comments. Leaders like Gerry Adams and Martin McGuinness are determined that whether this peace holds or not, there'll be no repetition of the bloody factional feuds seen within the Republican movement in the past. Mark Devonport, BBC News, Belfast.
The Defence Secretary, Michael Portillo, has stressed the importance of the nation-state in the wake of German Chancellor Helmut Kohl's suggestion that war would result unless there was closer European integration. Mr. Portillo said people identified with nation-states, but that was not the same thing as nationalism. About a quarter of the lessons taught in English primary and secondary schools are still substandard, according to the annual report of the school's chief inspector. The report, to be published tomorrow, is expected to say that children in the top classes of primary schools have the worst problems.
The Chief Inspector's State of the Nation report covers a year which saw Hackney Downs become the first school to be closed down after failing its inspection. So far, over 100 schools have been named as failing, and the Chief Inspector is likely to highlight the substantial minority of lessons which are still badly taught. As last year, the problem is expected to be worst at the top end of primary schools. The Chief Inspector, Chris Woodhead, antagonised teachers last year when he told the BBC's Panorama programme that there could be as many as 15,000 incompetent teachers who shouldn't remain in their jobs. His criticisms of teaching methods have angered some teaching unions.
Very demanding job.
Right, just read a bit more, please.
Tomorrow's report will, for the first time, name around 30 outstanding secondary schools, including Liverpool's Bluecoat School, where 98% of pupils got 5 good GCSEs last summer. But the list is bound to cause political controversy, as 2/3 of those named are selective grammar schools.
Her Majesty's Chief Inspector has a duty to tell the British public how the system is standing as he sees it at any one time. And to pick out only 32 and say these are doing very well isn't really giving a fair picture of the whole system, which is what he ought to be doing.
The Inspector's report is likely to reopen the political row over Labour's policy on grammar schools. It comes as Labour local council leaders are preparing a new policy document urging the party to close remaining grammar schools and make distance from school the main criterion for admissions. Mike Baker, BBC News.
In the FA Carling Premiership, a hat-trick by Gavin Peacock helped Chelsea to a 5-0 win over Middlesbrough. The result lifts Chelsea up to 8th position. The Dutch star Ruud Gullit gave another impressive performance, but Peacock's finishing topped the afternoon as he scored the first hat-trick by a Chelsea player for nearly 6 years. Genetically modified tomato paste has gone on sale in British supermarkets. It's made from tomatoes which have an added gene designed to slow the ripening process. Scientists say many more genetically improved products are set to follow.
It looks like ordinary tomato paste, but in fact it's made with tomatoes genetically modified to slow down the ripening process. The tomatoes are grown in California. Normally, when tomatoes are picked and transported, some inevitably get broken and bruised and are wasted. With the new gene added, they survive better. Scientists believe it's the start of a new era in food technology.
It's the first small step towards improving the quality of a whole range of agricultural products.
The tomato paste went on sale today in many Safeway and Sainsbury's supermarkets. Because there's less wastage in production, the paste is cheaper. Shoppers seemed unconcerned the paste comes from genetically modified tomatoes.
I've got no qualms at all. I think the government have said it's perfectly all right, and I believe them.
The new tomato paste has been through all the British regulatory authorities, and there's no concern about its safety. That's because it's an inert substance. It's processed, not living. But companies wanting to market whole genetically engineered fruits and vegetables in the future will have to face new European legislation now being prepared, and that could be a tougher challenge. James Wilkinson, BBC News, Epsom.
And the main news again. America says it wants the Bosnian-Serb leaders Radovan Karadzic and Ratko Mladic handed over to stand trial for alleged war crimes. Breakfast News is on BBC1 at 7 o'clock tomorrow, followed by the first edition of Breakfast News Extra at 9. But that's all from the newsroom tonight. Good night.
I'm gone fishing. Early morning. These fishing boats are after the ones that got away. There are now too many boats, too few fish.
I worry that politicians just aren't taking this problem seriously.
It's a crisis, and no one knows better than Mick.
We might have to start throwing these back in the sea, Ted.
Hard to imagine chips without fish. An extraordinary tale. Panorama, tomorrow, 9:30, BBC1.
Good evening to you. Details of this week's weather will prove elusive, so stay tuned day by day. We know it's going to stay cold, and we know there'll be sleet and snow around every day. There's a band of snow coming in from the west tomorrow, for example, and we're going to find that snow band being enhanced by further snow as we go through Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. As I say, details are going to be difficult, but there certainly will be some heavy snowfall around with blizzards, especially in the hills. A touch of winter tonight, really. Central and eastern parts of the country having a cold night, a touch of frost around. In fact, -3 to -5 degrees across the south of England. No such problems out in the far west, where it's already turning windy, and you'll find the wind freshening elsewhere, so temperatures perhaps by breakfast time not as low as that. Already some rain showing up across Ireland and approaching the Outer Hebrides as well, and that rain band moving into many western parts of the country through the night, with some snow showing up on the western hills of Scotland. The rain getting into West Wales and Cornwall by breakfast. The reason for the rain and then the sleet and the snow, this weather system here with some strong winds ahead of it, rather lighter winds for the afternoon behind it. But the rain readily turning to sleet and snow across many parts of the country as we go through Monday, probably not reaching East Anglia though until well on into the evening, with a drier slot eventually following in from the west. So eventually Northern Ireland brightening up, and that's where the highest temperatures are likely to be. Good night.
Tonight, Ruby Wax joins camera crew and Super Babe Pamela Anderson.
In my mind, I think I'm really hot until I look at a picture, I see myself, and then I go, oh, geez, I can't believe that. Think about what I go through.
But Ruby's got what it takes.
I'm going to be in the real Baywatch. If I make it to the top, I'll always remember you.
Ruby Wax meets Pamela Anderson, tonight at 10 on BBC1.
Continuing our new gritty drama series fast on BBC1, it seems McCaffrey's not the only one playing for Cathy's heart in a mugs game.
From tomorrow night, I expect you to stay on after hours till you've made up every minute of time you owe this company. The police have been to see me. It seems that a boy with a Belfast accent who looks a lot like you has been running a one-man shoplifting ring round Campbelltown.
About to become a local businessman.
Which means he's going to lose a lot of money, probably no his.
Not selling fish at a loss is a profit in my book.
He's not watching you, he's watching Cathy.
The audition's next week.
How do you know you'll get in?
Have you seen the competition in these places? They're all fat, rich kids with less talent than chin.